Have you ever met someone who was just incredibly confident about something they clearly knew nothing about? Well, it turns out there's a name for that. And what's so fascinating is that it's not just about other people, it applies to every single one of us. So let's dive into one of the most famous and maybe most humbling biases in all of psychology. Okay, our story kicks off with this completely baffling statement. When police finally caught up to a bank robber named MacArthur Wheeler back in '95, this is what he said, in total and complete shock. But what in the world could he possibly mean by the juice? No, you've heard that right. Wheeler had heard somewhere that lemon juice could be used as invisible ink. So his logic was, well, if I cover my face in lemon juice, I'll be invisible to security cameras. He robbed 2 banks in the middle of the day, literally smiling at the cameras, absolutely convinced his plan was genius. Now, he wasn't crazy, he was just profoundly, and you could say dangerously, wrong. This incredible story of misplaced confidence got 2 social psychologists, David Dunning and Justin Kruger, thinking. Was this guy just a one-off, a bizarre story for the evening news, or did it point to something deeper, a fundamental glitch in how all our brains work? They had a hunch that Wheeler wasn't just an incompetent criminal. He was actually too incompetent to even see his own incompetence. And that one idea led them to a discovery that perfectly explains why sometimes a little bit of knowledge can be a very, very dangerous thing. What they found reveals a pattern of unearned confidence that we can all fall into. And it starts with a really simple question. So just think about it for a second. Right now, are you average? A little better than average? Maybe a 7, an 8? I think most of us feel like we're pretty good drivers, right? For sure better than that person who just cut us off in traffic. Well, here is the cold, hard, statistical reality check. In one study, a staggering 93% of Americans rated themselves as above average drivers. Of course, it's mathematically impossible for almost everyone to be in the top half. This isn't just about ego, it's a genuine cognitive glitch. And that glitch has a name, the Dunning-Kruger effect. So what is it exactly? It's the bias where people who are unskilled at something aren't just bad at it, they're also completely unable to see that they're bad at it. Their own incompetence robs them of the very insight needed to spot their incompetence. And this graph, this just illustrates the whole journey perfectly. When you know almost nothing about a subject, your confidence can shoot way up to what's famously called Mount Stupid. You know just enough to think you know it all. But then, as you actually start learning, you realize how much you don't know, and bam, your confidence crashes into the valley of despair. It's only with real effort and true expertise that your confidence slowly and justifiably begins to climb back up. But why? Why does this happen? Why are we so blind to our own limits sometimes? Well, it all comes down to something Dunning and Kruger called the double curse. Before we get into that, though, it is so important to really absorb this quote from Professor Dunning himself, because it's really tempting to hear about this effect and immediately think of, that one guy at work or your uncle at Thanksgiving. But the research is crystal clear. This is a universal human condition. We all have our blind spots. We all have our own personal areas of Dunning-Kruger. So here's the curse. To know if you're good at grammar, you have to, have a good command of grammar. To know if you're telling a funny joke, you need to have a good sense of humor. The skills that make you competent are the exact same skills that allow you to recognize competence in the first place. So if you don't have those skills, you're cursed twice. 1, you'll make mistakes, and 2, you won't even have the tools to see them. Dunning and Kruger decided to test this across a few different areas. They got a bunch of Cornell students and gave them tests on things that require some real know-how, like recognizing what's funny, solving logic puzzles, and understanding grammar. And after each test, they just asked a simple question. So, how do you think you did? And the results were kind of mind-blowing. Let's just take the humor study. The students who scored in the bottom 25%, the worst performers, they believed they had performed better than average, ranking themselves at about the 58th percentile. And their actual score? They were in the 12th percentile. They were just blissfully unaware of how badly they'd done. But here's the other wild part of this effect. What about the top performers? Well, they had the opposite problem. They knew they did well, but they actually tended to underestimate just how well they did compared to everyone else. They just assumed, hey, if this was easy for me, it must be pretty easy for everyone. It's kind of like a form of imposter syndrome.
If you like this kind of content, make sure to subscribe.
Okay, so if we all fall into this trap, how do we get out of it? The good news is we totally can. The cure for the Dunning-Kruger effect is knowledge. As you get better at something, you also get better at judging your own abilities. Really, the way out is all about your mindset. First, just keep learning. Never assume you've mastered anything. There's always more to know. Second, actively seek out and listen to constructive feedback, especially from people who know more than you do. And third, get comfortable with the boundaries of your own knowledge. It is totally okay. In fact, it's smart to say, I don't know. At the end of the day, understanding this effect isn't about feeling bad about our shortcomings. It's actually about embracing something way more powerful and accurate: intellectual humility. I mean, more than 2,000 years ago, Socrates was basically pointing to the exact same idea. True wisdom isn't about collecting all the answers. It's about being deeply aware of the vastness of your own ignorance. And that's really the big takeaway here. The goal isn't to stop trusting yourself or to be paralyzed by doubt. It's to build a kind of confidence that's actually earned and realistic, one that's grounded not in ignorance, but in a clear-eyed understanding of what you know, and just as importantly, what you still have yet to learn. And I just want to leave you with this perfect modern take on the whole idea. The very nature of this bias is that it's invisible to the person who's in its grip. So the challenge for all of us is to just live our lives assuming we might be a card-carrying member of the club.